Hello, people. Get my camera set there. I finished a book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. I've had this book for a long time, and I remember starting it. I didn't have a bookmark in there, so I don't know how far I got. But years and years ago, I remember starting it and pronouncing it unreadable, and it sat on my shelf. This thing was so out of circulation for me that it was actually in my attic. I have a bookshelf up there with some very shitty books, books that are borderline just throw away. That's how shitty they are. But I never throw away books. I'll take them to King Book and just give them to King Book. And King Book's got an area where they have free books. And I think that's where real crappy books end up, is on that shelf for free books. And people actually take those free books like interior decorators, and they'll put them on a shelf in somebody's house to make it look like they're scholarly and they read books, when in actuality they've never read anything. So anyways, I finished this. It took me about 3 weeks to finish it. It's only 425 pages. This was published in 1997. But I started reading this at the cabin. I continued reading it when I stopped in Detroit on my way back here, and now I have finished it here in Florida. Maybe because it took me so long, or I was in 3 different places and moving shit around, there's not a whole lot of notes. I mean, I have 1 page here, and most of this page is taken up by, I kept track of how much gas it cost me to drive from Detroit to Florida. And in a 2010 F-150 with the 5.2 liter motor, this time it cost me $224.07. That's just counting gas. That's not cigarettes and stopping to eat at Waffle House and shit like that. It cost me a little bit more to drive. Even though guns is in the title, this author spends very little time discussing firearms or cannon or anything like that. 4 or 5 pages maybe out of the whole thing. The author has a weird habit of using words that I've never run into before. One of them was pertussis, which is whooping cough. I had never heard that in my life. Another one is pulses. I had never run into that in my life, but it's like a bean type food. The author spends a lot of time talking about domesticated animals, domesticated plants that we use for food. And it turns out that whether a civilization advances fast or whether it advances slow depends a lot on where that civilization is. If they don't have plants that are worth a fuck to domesticate, and they don't have animals that they can domesticate, they're not going to advance. They're not going to end up on top like Eurasia has. Also, the axis of the continent. The Americas, the axis is north-south. Africa, the axis is north-south. Eurasia, the axis is east-west. And in large part, the Eurasian continent has similar climate throughout the whole thing. You can take a plant that was first cultivated in the Fertile Crescent and move it over to France or Germany, and it's going to do fine there. You can also take animals. The longer that a people have been civilized, the longer that they're living in dense concentrations, the longer that they're living with livestock, means that they've already been exposed to germs. And we all know the stories about what happens to American Indians and South American Indians when they get exposed to new germs. It was actually a very good book. Uh, I had a hard time finishing it, but there was a lot of information in it. It's odd because usually I fly through books. I read them in like a week. This one took me 3 weeks, and I actually seem to have retained a little bit more of the information in it. This author, his name is Jared Diamond. It sounds like he did a lot of anthropological work in New Guinea. So there's a hell of a lot of information here about New Guinea, Indonesia, and island societies. And honestly, being a white American, I expect all my history to have to do with Europe. So that was a little bit of a chore for me to read that too. I realize that's just a deficiency on my part. There's no people that are more important than any others. I don't have much reading to do here, but here's one, the top paragraph on page 399. I realized as I got close to finishing this that I didn't mark any passages to read, so I got a couple of them here. It's true, of course, that some large African animals have occasionally been tamed. Tamed is different than domesticated. Hannibal enlisted tamed African elephants in his unsuccessful war against Rome, and ancient Egyptians may have tamed giraffes and other species, but none of those tamed animals was actually domesticated. That is, selectively bred in captivity and genetically modified so as to become more useful to humans. Had Africa's rhinos and hippos been domesticated and ridden, they would not only have fed armies, but also have provided an unstoppable cavalry to cut through the ranks of European horsemen. Rhino-mounted Bantu shock troops could have overthrown the Roman Empire. It never happened. I just thought that was a very cool image, and I thought I would read that. But having animals that you can domesticate, and animals that can work for you, and animals that can pull a wheeled vehicle for you, was very important in how fast a civilization advances. I spent a lot of time on YouTube arguing with white supremacists and racists, and I clearly remember one time that this guy or this gal said to me, that the Africans never even developed a wheel. And it stopped me cold in my tracks. I couldn't figure out, well, what the hell? How come they would never invent a wheel? Well, they have wheels now because they have draft animals. If you didn't have any draft animals, it's kind of useless to have a wheel. The Mesoamericans independently invented the wheel, but they also had no draft animals. So the only place they used wheels was on toys. And the only different thing I can think of is the Chinese invented the wheelbarrow. And it's human powered. Not everybody invented the wheelbarrow. We all got the wheelbarrow from them. And what a hell of an invention, because I was just using one at my cabin to clear away the leaves. I don't really burn the leaves much anymore. Burning the leaves takes a long time. And the fucking leaf pile is still on fire the next morning. It's dangerous. It's a lot easier just for me to load it into a wheelbarrow, carry it off somewhere in the woods, make a big leaf pile. I think the animals like that anyway. They burrow in there for the winter. Last little bit here, page 409. And I gotta find this because it's not the entire paragraph. Great. Okay, here it is. A historian who had lived at any time between 8500 BC and AD 1450, apparently this book was written before the whole CE and BCE thing, and who had tried then to predict future historical trajectories, would surely have labeled Europe's eventual dominance as the least likely outcome. because Europe was the most backward of those three Old World regions for most of those 10,000 years. From 8500 BC until the rise of Greece and then Italy after 500 BC, almost all major innovations in Western Eurasia, animal domestication, plant domestication, writing, metallurgy, wheels, states, and so on, arose in or near the Fertile Crescent, until the proliferation of water mills after about AD 900. Europe west or north of the Alps contributed nothing of significance to Old World technology or civilization. It was instead a recipient of developments from the Eastern Mediterranean, Fertile Crescent, and China. Even from AD 1000 to 1450, the flow of science and technology was predominantly into Europe from the Islamic societies stretching from India to North Africa, rather than vice versa. During those same centuries, China led the world in technology, having launched itself on food production nearly as early as the Fertile Crescent did. It was a cool book. They not only talked about plants and animals, but they talked about writing, they talked about technology, and the Mesoamericans, again, independently developed writing. They didn't get it from somebody else. It wasn't no diffusion of ideas. They figured it out themselves, even though theirs was like more pictographs than alphabets. Very interesting. I recommend the book, and I'm betting that this is one of those books, because it says here it's a national bestseller. I'm betting this is one of those books that a lot of people have on their shelves and maybe haven't finished. Anyways, thanks for watching.